What if some of the most powerful plants for improving insulin sensitivity are growing in your backyard right now, and most people pull them out and throw them away? For decades, the conversation around blood sugar has focused on expensive medications, complicated diet plans, and highly processed health foods. Yet many traditional cultures relied on common wild plants long before anyone understood insulin, glucose transporters, or cellular metabolism. Stick around, because number 13 on this list contains compounds that researchers have linked to improved glucose handling in ways that surprised even scientists. And number 3 has been used for centuries as both food and medicine. Yet most homeowners spend money trying to eliminate it from their lawns. Here's the fascinating part. These plants were never marketed. They were never patented. And because nobody could own them, they rarely became the focus of large commercial research programs. Modern science has now begun catching up to what generations of farmers, herbalists, and traditional healers observed firsthand. Hit that subscribe button right now, because every week we connect cutting-edge nutrition science with the foods your body was designed to thrive on. Let's get into it. Here are 20 backyard weeds that destroy insulin resistance, ranked from remarkable to absolutely astonishing. Across Europe and the Middle East, dandelion was harvested as both food and medicine for centuries. Traditional communities consumed the leaves in spring and roasted the roots as a beverage long before modern nutrition existed. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Dandelion contains inulin, polyphenols, and chlorogenic acid. These compounds support beneficial gut bacteria and may help regulate glucose absorption. Research published in Nutrients has highlighted how chlorogenic acid can influence carbohydrate metabolism and insulin function. Here's the traditional use. Harvest young leaves before flowering and add them to salads. The root can be cleaned, dried, and roasted for tea. Avoid heavily sprayed lawns and roadside plants. Dandelion got forgotten because industrial food systems replaced nutrient-dense wild greens with packaged convenience foods. Natural plants also offer little opportunity for exclusive patents. Dandelion still offers what it offered for thousands of years. Ancient Greeks and people throughout the Mediterranean prized purslane as both a vegetable and medicinal herb. It thrived in dry soils where many cultivated crops struggled. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Purslane contains alpha-linolenic acid, betalains, magnesium, and antioxidants. Studies published in the Journal of Medicinal Food have reported improvements in fasting blood glucose and insulin markers among participants consuming purslane preparations. Here's the traditional use. Eat the succulent stems and leaves fresh in salads or lightly sautéed. Look for thick, fleshy leaves and avoid ornamental lookalikes. Purslane got forgotten because it grows freely and abundantly. Industrial agriculture had little incentive to promote a plant that appears naturally in gardens. Purslane still offers what it offered since the ancient Mediterranean world. Throughout medieval Europe and early America, plantain grew along pathways and village roads. Herbal traditions often called it the herb that followed human footsteps. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Plantain contains soluble fiber, aucubin, and polyphenols. These compounds may help slow glucose absorption and support a healthier metabolic response after meals. Research has increasingly linked fiber-rich plants with improved insulin sensitivity. Here's the traditional use. Young leaves can be cooked like spinach or added to soups. Harvest from clean locations, away from traffic contamination. Plantain got forgotten because modern diets moved away from wild greens and toward highly processed carbohydrates. Plantain still offers what it offered for centuries of traditional use. For thousands of years, communities across northern Europe harvested nettles each spring. Despite the sting, they valued the plant as a nourishing food. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Nettle provides magnesium, potassium, chlorophyll, and bioactive flavonoids. Research published in Clinical Laboratory has reported improvements in blood glucose control among individuals using nettle preparations. Here's the traditional use. Wear gloves when harvesting. Cooking or drying removes the sting. Use the leaves in soups, teas, or vegetable dishes. Nettle got forgotten because nutrient-rich wild foods were replaced by shelf-stable processed products. Stinging nettle still offers what it offered for generations of homestead families. Traditional European herbalists frequently gathered chickweed during cool growing seasons. It was considered both food and restorative nourishment. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Chickweed contains vitamin C, flavonoids, and antioxidant compounds that help combat oxidative stress. Lower oxidative stress is strongly associated with healthier insulin signaling. Here's the traditional use. Harvest tender young growth and add it fresh to salads or blend into green drinks. Use only correctly identified plants. Chickweed got forgotten because it could not compete commercially with packaged health products. Chickweed still offers what it offered for hundreds of years. Native peoples throughout North America and ancient communities in Central America consumed lamb's quarters long before modern agriculture dominated the landscape. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Lamb's quarters contains magnesium, potassium, fiber, and antioxidant pigments. These nutrients support glucose metabolism and healthy cellular energy production. Here's the traditional use. Cook the leaves as you would spinach. Young leaves are generally the most tender and enjoyable. Lamb's quarters got forgotten because commercial farming favored standardized crops over nutrient-rich wild foods. Lamb's quarters still offers what it offered since ancient agricultural civilizations. In Japan, China, and parts of Europe, burdock root was treasured as both food and medicine. Entire communities incorporated it into daily meals. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Burdock root contains inulin, lignans, and polyphenols. Inulin acts as a prebiotic fiber that supports gut health, which modern research increasingly links to insulin sensitivity and metabolic regulation. Here's the traditional use. Harvest roots from young plants before they become woody. Clean thoroughly and cook like root vegetables. Burdock got forgotten because fiber-rich traditional foods were replaced by refined carbohydrates and processed snacks. Burdock still offers what it offered for centuries across Asia and Europe. Yarrow was widely used by ancient Greeks, Native American tribes, and rural European communities. It often grew in meadows and along field edges, where healers gathered it for a variety of traditional purposes. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Yarrow contains flavonoids, sesquiterpene lactones, and antioxidant compounds that help reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. Modern research increasingly recognizes chronic inflammation as one of the major drivers of insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. Here's the traditional use. Harvest flowering tops during dry weather and prepare them as tea. Fresh leaves can also be used in small amounts in herbal preparations. Avoid plants growing near polluted roadsides. Yarrow got forgotten because it was overshadowed by pharmaceutical solutions and commercial wellness products that could be packaged and marketed more easily. Yarrow still offers what it offered for thousands of years. For centuries, farmers and herbalists across Europe valued red clover. It was commonly gathered from fields and pastures and often consumed as a nourishing tonic. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Red clover contains isoflavones, polyphenols, and antioxidant compounds that support healthy circulation and metabolic function. Research has shown that oxidative stress reduction can play an important role in improving insulin responsiveness. Here's the traditional use. Dry the blossoms and prepare them as tea. Select vibrant flowers harvested from unsprayed areas. Proper drying helps preserve beneficial compounds. Red clover got forgotten because naturally occurring plants cannot easily generate the profits associated with patented products and proprietary formulas. Red clover still offers what it offered since the days of traditional farming communities. Ancient Chinese, Korean, and European cultures all used mugwort. Historical records show it was incorporated into seasonal wellness practices and traditional herbal systems. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Mugwort contains flavonoids, terpenoids, and antioxidant compounds that may support metabolic health by helping regulate inflammatory pathways associated with insulin resistance. Here's the traditional use. Young leaves can be dried and used in teas or traditional preparations. Correct identification is essential because some related plants may cause confusion. Mugwort got forgotten because industrial medicine focused primarily on isolated compounds rather than whole plants with multiple active constituents. Mugwort still offers what it offered for centuries of traditional use. If the pattern is becoming clear, that real food grown in real soil does what expensive medications promise, then do me a favor and hit the like button right now. It helps this channel reach people who are searching for answers that actually work. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe and ring the bell. We cover ancestral nutrition, homestead health, and evidence-based natural healing every single week. Now let's finish the list with the most powerful ones. Wild garlic has been gathered across Europe and Asia for countless generations. Rural communities often harvested it in early spring when fresh foods were scarce after winter. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Wild garlic contains allicin and sulfur compounds that support cardiovascular and metabolic health. Research published in the Journal of Nutrition has linked garlic compounds to improved insulin sensitivity and healthier glucose regulation. Here's the traditional use. Harvest fresh leaves before flowering and use them in soups, salads, or pestos. Proper identification is essential because some poisonous plants can resemble wild garlic. Wild garlic got forgotten because fresh wild foods do not fit neatly into highly processed food supply chains. Wild garlic still offers what it offered for thousands of years. Native peoples and European settlers alike consumed wood sorrel as a refreshing wild green. Its bright flavor made it a popular addition to seasonal meals. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry is now confirmed in clinical detail. Wood sorrel contains vitamin C, potassium, and antioxidant compounds that help protect cells from oxidative damage. Healthy cellular function is closely connected to proper insulin signaling and glucose utilization. Here's the traditional use. Use small amounts of fresh leaves in salads or as a garnish. Because it contains oxalic acid, moderation is important. Wood sorrel got forgotten because naturally growing plants rarely receive the advertising support enjoyed by commercial health products. Wood sorrel still offers what it offered since early homestead days. Bittercress has long been gathered by rural families throughout Europe and North America. Though small and easily overlooked, it often appeared in traditional spring diets. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Bittercress contains glucosinolates and antioxidant phytochemicals. These compounds are converted into biologically active molecules that help support detoxification pathways and healthy metabolic processes. Here's the traditional use. Harvest young leaves before flowering for the mildest flavor. Add them to salads or lightly cooked dishes. Bittercress got forgotten because modern agriculture prioritized large-scale commercial crops over nutrient-dense wild plants. Bittercress still offers what it offered for generations of traditional food gathering. Traditional herbalists throughout Britain and Northern Europe valued cleavers every spring. The plant was commonly used during seasonal transitions when people sought renewed vitality after winter. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Cleavers contains flavonoids, chlorophyll, and antioxidant compounds that support healthy circulation and cellular health. These functions indirectly contribute to better metabolic resilience and insulin responsiveness. Here's the traditional use. Harvest tender young shoots and prepare them as tea or blend them into green beverages. Fresh material is generally preferred. Cleavers got forgotten because modern health culture increasingly favored packaged supplements over freely available plants. Cleavers still offers what it offered for centuries of traditional wellness practices. Shepherd's purse grew throughout the Middle East, Europe, and Asia, and was commonly gathered by farmers and village healers. It often appeared in traditional diets during times when cultivated vegetables were scarce. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Shepherd's purse contains flavonoids, choline, and antioxidant compounds that support healthy vascular function and cellular resilience. Scientists increasingly recognize that metabolic health depends heavily on reducing chronic oxidative stress and supporting healthy circulation. Here's the traditional use. Harvest the young leaves before the plant matures and add them to soups, broths, or salads. Always gather from clean, unsprayed areas. Shepherd's purse got forgotten because it never became a commercial crop and offered little opportunity for exclusive ownership. Shepherd's purse still offers what it offered for centuries of traditional use. Ancient Egyptians cultivated chicory, and later Europeans used its roots extensively as both food and beverage. During periods of scarcity, roasted chicory root became especially valuable. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Chicory contains large amounts of inulin, a prebiotic fiber strongly associated with improved gut health. Research published in Nutrients has shown that inulin can support beneficial bacteria that influence glucose metabolism, insulin sensitivity, and inflammation. Here's the traditional use. Harvest roots in autumn, clean thoroughly, and roast before preparing as a beverage. Fresh leaves can also be added to salads. Chicory got forgotten because refined foods displaced traditional fiber-rich staples throughout much of the modern world. Chicory still offers what it offered since the age of the ancient Egyptians. Mallow was consumed across the Mediterranean, North Africa, and the Middle East for thousands of years. Historical records show it was valued as both nourishment and gentle herbal support. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Mallow contains mucilage, polyphenols, and antioxidant compounds that help support digestive health. A healthier digestive environment often contributes to better glucose regulation and improved metabolic balance. Here's the traditional use. Young leaves can be cooked like spinach or added to soups and stews. Harvest before the plant becomes tough and fibrous. Mallow got forgotten because industrial food production favored crops designed for transportation and shelf life rather than nutritional diversity. Mallow still offers what it offered for thousands of years. Wild violets have been harvested throughout Europe and North America for generations. Early settlers and traditional herbalists frequently included them in seasonal diets. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Violet leaves contain vitamin C, flavonoids, and antioxidant compounds that help protect tissues from oxidative damage. Modern science increasingly connects antioxidant-rich diets with healthier insulin signaling and metabolic performance. Here's the traditional use. Gather young leaves in spring and add them to salads or green drinks. Proper plant identification remains essential. Violet leaves got forgotten because they were replaced by commercially produced vegetables and packaged convenience foods. Violet leaves still offers what it offered for generations of traditional households. Across Europe and parts of Asia, dock was valued for both its leaves and roots. Traditional communities often relied on it as a dependable source of nourishment from uncultivated land. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Dock contains fiber, polyphenols, and minerals that support metabolic health. Fiber helps slow the absorption of carbohydrates, reducing dramatic swings in blood glucose and insulin levels. Here's the traditional use. Young leaves can be cooked in soups, while roots are often harvested in autumn. Avoid plants growing in contaminated soils. Dock got forgotten because processed foods became easier to purchase than preparing traditional wild plants. Dock still offers what it offered for centuries of practical homestead living. While the leaves receive attention, traditional healers from Europe to the Holy Land often prized the root most highly. It was harvested, dried, and stored for use throughout the year. Here's what they understood through generations of observation that modern biochemistry has now confirmed in clinical detail. Dandelion root contains concentrated inulin, chlorogenic acid, and powerful polyphenols. Research suggests these compounds may support healthier gut microbiota, improved glucose metabolism, and reduced inflammation. Because insulin resistance is deeply connected to gut health and chronic inflammation, dandelion root occupies a unique position among traditional foods. Here's the traditional use. Harvest mature roots in autumn, wash thoroughly, slice thinly, and dry before roasting. Avoid commercially sweetened products that contain only small amounts of actual root. Dandelion root got forgotten because no company can patent a weed growing freely in millions of backyards. Dandelion root still offers what it offered for thousands of years. If you made it all the way through, here is your complete framework. When you step back and look at this list, a clear pattern begins to emerge. Plants like dandelion root, chicory, burdock, and plantain help support gut health through prebiotic fibers that nourish beneficial bacteria. Others, including nettle, lamb's quarters, dock, and purslane, provide minerals that support healthy glucose metabolism and insulin function. A third group, including yarrow, red clover, violet leaves, chickweed, and cleavers, helps reduce oxidative stress through powerful antioxidant compounds. And then there are the traditional culinary herbs and wild greens, such as wild garlic, wood sorrel, shepherd's purse, mallow, bittercress, and mugwort, that contribute a broad spectrum of phytochemicals supporting metabolic resilience. The lesson is remarkably simple. The people who came before us did not know about insulin receptors, inflammatory cytokines, microbiomes, or glucose transport proteins. Yet they repeatedly returned to these plants because they noticed the results. Modern science has now confirmed many of the mechanisms behind those observations. What was once dismissed as folklore is increasingly being validated in laboratories, universities, and clinical research centers around the world. Smash that like button if this changed the way you look at backyard weeds. Drop a comment below and tell me which plant surprised you most. Are you Team Dandelion, Team Purslane, or Team Nettle? I read every single comment. And if you haven't subscribed to Homestead Roots yet, click that button now and ring the bell. We post every week, and we are just getting started. Because the most powerful nutrition doesn't come in a prescription. It grows in a garden, appears along a fence row, and was eaten by some of the healthiest people who ever lived. And now you know exactly which plants to grow, eat, and prepare.